All right, the name of this panel is Youth Calling. We assume that everybody here has an interest in calling for youth or calls for youth or is just looking to learn more about calling for youth.
Or used to be a youth.
Or is looking to help us understand youth. I've got a couple of opening comments to make, and we'll kind of let things develop naturally from there. My name's Bruce Mitchell. This is Tim Teal. And as you receive the microphone and start to talk, just for the purposes of the tape, people that are listening to the tape would probably like to know who you are, so they can associate a face with a voice. Okay, basically, the youth of today is a different breed than the youth of the '60s, and I think it's not to throw a negative light on this. But I think it's important for us to take a look at what's going on now, and maybe it will help us to understand what's happening with the youth of today, and maybe to sort of understand why we don't have the big youth groups that we had in the past. Today the youth are made to feel important. Their opinion counts, their words are heard. No longer do the parents say, "Look in your plate." It's not at all unusual. It happens to Judy and I all the time. We'll be talking to a parent, and the child will come up with some trivial piece of information or a bug that they found, and the parent will cut us off and start talking to the youth as if the youth was the president of the United States. So it's just different now. The parents cater to their wins. The school caters to their wins. If they're failing, it must be the teacher's fault. If the child is bad, it's because the teacher's not relating to them properly. My own daughter had a boyfriend who would only eat hamburgers, French fries, and chicken fingers. His mother never made him eat vegetables. It was just, you just don't do that. Children no longer feel the need to please us. They aren't going to learn to dance to please us. They're only going to learn to dance if it pleases them. Thank you, Dr. Spock, for giving us the me generation and the children of the me generation. That in mind, the enviable task of recreating the scores of youth clubs of yesteryear. We're no longer competing against, we're no longer competing just against the boys' clubs and the CYOs twice a year for baseball or football. Every organization sees the youth as their future lifeblood and the lifeblood of their organization, and we're competing against everything. So let's get real. We may never see the 8 or 10 youth clubs per area, but that doesn't mean we should give up on them either. We want to just keep plugging away until we can find a formula for making their activity happen. Now, I have some theories of my own as to what makes it happen with youth, but what I really want, I want to take away from this convention more than I bring to it. So I want you to tell me what your secret is. How do you relate to the youth, and how do you call for the youth? And then Tim and I will give you our experiences, and maybe we can all come away with a better understanding of youth and youth callers and youth dancers and what's going on with the youth. Tim, you're on.
Well, I'll start with saying, my experiences is I was a teen for 8 years. Most of you probably just for 7, but I was held back 1 year. I have been involved. I began square dancing as a teen. My parents square danced. I kind of grew up in it. And liking music, being the ham I am, about the second night of lessons, I looked at the caller and said, "Gee, I think I'd like to do that." So within a few months after me graduating square dance lessons, I was into calling, and I've been calling since I was 15. I've been calling for about 4 years now, and give or take a few. I never was good on math. And I've worked with teen clubs and teen groups, both square dance, what I call square dance teens. That is kids who have taken square dance lessons in a square dance club, and they are square dancers. I also work very often, and have for a long time, with what I call non-square dance kids. That is where we go out and do square dances for church groups, school groups, any kind of organization where we're dancing with some kids that are not square dancers. And we may call this a one-night stand, you may call this a party night, but my calling partner, Steve Hoffman, and I work with a lot of these groups, and we look at this as a very good opportunity to, give them a view of square dancing. As again, I didn't come up here with a lot of things to tell you, and if you came here looking for answers to say it's a magic formula that you can leave with, it's going to make teen dancing boom in your area, I hope that answer comes out of this meeting, because I'm going to write it down, but it won't come out of me. I don't have those answers. I have ideas and theories. I can tell you my past experiences, and I can tell you things I've seen work and not work. But this is an idea-sharing meeting is what I've got here to talk about what worked in the past. Will it work now? What ideas do we have? I can tell you what I've tried, and I want to hear what y'all have tried. And as I told Bruce, I think the best thing in these meetings is not for y'all to come here and listen to Bruce and I, but if anything, we'd kind of be the moderator and lead the discussion. Give me comments and let's share it with everybody. Ask me questions, and if I get a question from this side of the room, chances are I'm not going to be the one to answer it. I hope somebody over here has an answer for it. And we'll write it down, and if you don't, then we'll get Bruce to answer it because, that's his job, is being the moderator. I do agree with Bruce some that kids today, may be different than they were in the past because, aren't we all? Times change. There was the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, whatever we're up to now. And all of it has changed in the way we live our life and do our jobs, technology. However, I believe a lot of the things are the same. I believe some stuff hasn't changed. And I think sometimes we overanalyze youth and what it takes to get them into square dancing and what it takes to get and keep them in square dancing. And I look back and I gave some long, hard thought about this when I thought, well, what was cool when I was a kid? And what did I think of square dancing? And my calling partner I referred to, Steve, who's sitting out here in the audience, has only been calling for 4, 5, 6 years now, 8 maybe something, but he's been dancing as long as I have. We didn't know it. We got to talking. The first national convention I ever attended was 1978, Oklahoma City. He was there too. It was 30 years later before we met each other. Well, not 30, but 20 years later. But so we've both been dancing that long since we were teenagers in high school, since back in the early 70s. And we got to talking about, what got me into square dancing? And why did I stay there? And how did I look at square dancing back then? And I looked at the music, the clothes, the adults we danced with, the functions we went to. And square dancing was probably just about as uncool back then to us as it is to the teens now. Back then we had old fogey square dance callers that we danced to. Well, we got them nowadays. That's you. I was going to say it. I was trying to leave that us part out, but yes, that's getting to be us. I'm going to get off the subject a little bit, but a comment that Bruce made earlier that he said, or not Bruce made, but in our last committee meeting, caller made that said he'd heard is very, very true. He said, he said I was talking to some young callers a while back, and we decided, hey, back when we were kids and started calling, we were the young callers. You realize today we're still the young callers. And I hadn't thought about that. Back when I started calling, I was the 15-year-old kid. I was the young caller. I'm 42, fixing to turn 43. I'm still one of the youngest callers around. That's just wrong. That's something, that is a problem right there. And pretty soon what's going to happen when I'm 60 and I look around and say, gee, I'm still the youngest caller around. But square dancing was probably just about as uncool when I started square dancing as it is now. The music that we square danced to was not what we listened to in our 8 tracks. The clothes that we wore at the square dance was certainly not the clothes that we wore at school and wore when we didn't go square dancing. The majority of the callers that we danced to were old fogey callers, and to put that in perspective too, I look back at the 2 or 3 callers that were my most favorite callers in my East Texas area when I started dancing, and I thought they were old folks. I called them old folks. And I do a little math now, and I realize that at that time they were plus or minus a year about the age I am right now. So keep that in mind about things are different, but something had to get us into square dancing because it wasn't that, we got in when the clothes weren't cool, the music wasn't cool, and it was a bunch of old people doing it, and it was a bunch of old callers calling. And in when I started dancing, I started calling in 74. From 74 through 78, 9, somewhere in there in college, we had a club in East Texas called the East Texas Teen Twirlers. We were the biggest club in the East Texas Square and Round Dance Association. we had a monthly dance, and we'd have 9 and 10 squares, and that's if nobody came to visit us. We had kids, and it wasn't just in one town, it was from all over the radius, and we had kids from like 12 years old to 20, 21. They were still dancing with us, you know. And we had a heck of a time. I can think of times that we chartered at that time. Where I'm located is north of Houston, east of Dallas. Dallas had a lot of teen callers and teen clubs. Houston had some. They put on some big teen festivals. We put on one. When Dallas would put one on, one year we chartered 2 buses. That's 2 44-passenger buses. We raised funds and chartered it and took teens and went and spent a weekend in Dallas at the teen festival, the Nortex Teen Roundup. A year later, we did the same thing, chartered 1 bus and went to Houston and did that. Now, I tell you this because I'm delving on history, but I'm saying I think we learn from history. And I don't know that enough has changed that what we had back then we couldn't have now. Getting back on the subject of when I said things are different, yeah, what is different is it's just about as uncool now. So I don't think that's totally what keeps kids out. I think you can get kids into square dancing. Yes, if you've got some techno music and some modern music and non-square dance music, that's great. But even without that, the kids will come to a square dance and have fun, even if they're dancing to some pop country tunes or something like that they're not going to listen to on the way home. The kids will come to a square dance, and just Saturday before I came down here, I called a dance up in Tyler, Texas. And that night we had some teens in our area dancing right now. We invited all of them to lead the Grand March. Had a square and a half, 6 couples of teens lead the Grand March. I would say they were in, and I would call them teens, kids, youth, whatever I refer to them, it's the same thing. I would say they were in age of right at 12, 13 to probably seniors in high school. And I think all the girls, except maybe one, was dressed in petticoats and a square dance attire, and the boys had on western and bowler, and they just, didn't think nothing about it. I know when we had our teen club, all the girls wanted square dance dresses. At that time, my girlfriend's mother, now my mother-in-law, they didn't dance at that time, but she sewed. I bet she made, I don't know how many dresses she made for all our teen clubs. The clothes didn't bother us. Here's where I'm going with this. You get a group of kids together, whether they're going to the pizza parlor, whether they're sitting on a parking lot talking out in front of the video store, whether they're joining square dancing or going to a techno music club, they're doing the same thing that we adults do when we go out with our friends together. They have fun. They'll talk about school. They'll talk about their boyfriend and girlfriend. They'll do kid things. Just like if we all went out this afternoon to some party, we'd all have fun. We'd talk and laugh about something. The fact that they're coming together to square dance, we don't have to, I don't think, restructure the whole square dance activity to where there is adult square dancing and there's youth square dancing and it doesn't look anything alike. Now, true, there'll be some variation, just like if you look at a basic club and a challenge club, there's some difference in how those clubs function and do. You have people that are avid square dancers and some that square around. You'll see different facets, and I'm sure a teen club is going to look a little different, I believe. But I don't think you have to structure the whole thing where it's so much a different activity that it's kind of like, it's not even the same thing. I think the biggest thing is how do you recruit and how do you maintain youth dancers? That's the biggest kicker. And let me say just a little bit more, then I'll quit talking and we can get on with some discussion. If you get a group of teens into square dancing, let's skip the beginning and take a few steps forward and say that we're there. We got teen dancers, 2 or 3 squares, 10 squares, I don't care. You've got the teen dancers. At this point, it's not too big a problem. I don't care if they come dance to Tim Mariner or they come dance to me or any of you in this room. They're going to have fun. They're going to cut up. They're going to laugh. They're going to like some callers better than others, no different than we all do. They're going to want to go back and hear you and not go back and hear me. It's no big deal. That's the same thing. They like some singers and don't like some singers. They're coming out to a square dance to have fun. They'll have fun at the dance just because they're going to cut up and laugh at themselves and laugh at you and laugh at everybody else and pick at their friends and enjoy what goes on. I go back to say, yes, surely, if we can gear if I'm calling for a teen club and a teen group, I'm certainly going to try to use some music that they like. I'm going to try to use some jokes and gimmicks that they like, but they like to be challenged, just like we do sometimes. They like to relax sometimes. They like a fast song with high energy. Have you ever listened to their music in their cars and stuff sometimes? It's not all that. They like a smooth, relaxing song sometimes. We discussed that in our committee meeting. Don't think because you're calling for youth that every song you do has to be total high energy, rock 'em off the wall. Because they can't stand that for 2 or 3 hours any more than you can. And if you listen to their CDs or their radio station, every song in a row is not that way. Okay? How do you challenge them? The same way we challenge us. How many of you challenge your dancers sometime with a hot hash tip, just by simply, as Dave Harry mentioned earlier, just ripping off calls fast to them? Just, start through, pass through, bend the line, right to left through, pass through, start through, pass through, bend the line. How many of you challenge your dancers sometimes by some gimmick choreography? Well, challenge the kids with gimmick. How many of you challenge the kids sometimes by using some unusual choreography or making it tough, doing some APD or DBD, whatever you want to call it? Well, do some of that for the kids. Which of those do you do all night long? You don't do any of them all night long. Just like you wouldn't do it at one of your other dances. I think to a great degree we need to treat the kids in dancing just like we treat our dancers to some extent. True, you make some judgment call. If I come to your club and call for your club, and I look out there and the club is all 55 to 65-year-old people, well, that may alter my tempo of the dance. That's a judgment call. I may select some tunes that I know were back in their days. That's a judgment call. If I come out here and I see all 25 to 35-year-olds and most of them got a belt buckle big as a dinner plate and a Copenhagen can in their back pocket, I may do more country music than I usually do. I can lodge, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I'm smarter than I look. I'll figure, okay, this is probably a redneck crowd. They probably like George Strait and Dwight Yoakam and that kind of stuff. That's a judgment call. If I come to a club and it's a teen club and a teen dance and all youth, that's going to affect my judgment on tempo, on selection of music. But some things that won't change, I'll have a fast one. I'll have a slow one. I'll have a tip that's pretty easy routine. I'll have a tip that's tough and makes you think. I'll have a tip that's just fast and keeps you moving. That entertains, that challenges. The same way I would if I called for any of you. Going back to the big thing, and I look at and this isn't going to wrap up my part where we talk, I look at, because I think one of the biggest things we ask about is what gets kids into square dancing and what keeps them there. And I look at how it started when I was there. I came from a little Class A school. My whole graduating class was 77 people. Our whole high school was maybe, 300 people or something. It was a small school. When I started square dancing, before I could drive, I think I was the only one in junior high that square danced. By the time I graduated high school, I could have walked down my high school hall and rounded up 4 squares of kids just like that danced. Of course, I was the weird kid back then. I'm a weird adult now, I guess. Well, Nasser's more weird than me, but, he's the master of weird. I wasn't embarrassed about it. I wasn't a kid that, don't tell nobody I square dance. I square dance, yeah. I'm going to try it. A lot of them laughed at me. I didn't care. A lot of them tried to say, I want to go try that. First thing you know, I got 2 more going with me. Now there's 3 of us. Next thing you know, there's some more. Here's your tough part. You get 2, how many have this ever happened to? You get 2 or 3 kids in dancing in a club, and they take lessons, and they graduate, and before next year's lessons start, they're gone. Because all of a sudden they were the only kid or 2, and they've been there, done that, and they want to go off now where all their friends are. This is your tough part. Now, if I could wave a magic wand and give you 2 squares of kids there, okay, now they got to be kids to play with and cut up with and ride to the dance with. Okay, now you've got that ball of clay started that you can add to and build. Once we got that little nucleus, it wasn't hard to build up. So the tough part to me is, how do you make these kids come out and want to? And that's the deal. They've got to want to do it. They cannot be made to come, and they cannot be made to stay. The kids have got to say, Mom, Dad, I want to go square dancing tonight. Just like they say, hey, can I go with so-and-so out to the video store? Can I go to the movie? Can I go to the mall? They've got to say, Mom and Dad say, what are you doing this weekend? Well, we wanted to go square dancing if we can. Can I go with so-and-so and over to the club over here? That they've got to want to. Then you've got them hooked. The tough part, and this is one of the deals where I don't know that I have the answer, is how do you get them first few in and keep them so that you have that nucleus to grow on? Because once we had that big teen club that I told you about, at that point, getting kids in wasn't the problem. My kids in school were asking, when can I go? When can I start? How do I do that? Can I ride with you? Because they realized we were going out, and we were having fun, and we were talking about it back at school. And when the dance was over, we went to the pizza parlor, or we went somewhere. And there was a couple of us that could drive. And let me tell you what, my first car was a 1970 2-door Chevrolet Impala. You know how many kids you can put in a 2-door 1970 Chevrolet Impala with petticoats? Thank heavens the 70 Impala had a big trunk. I would drive a route through White Oak. And this is the serious truth. At school that day, they start talking about it Friday. Where are we going dancing at? Well, we're going over to so-and-so to this club. Okay, I want to go. And I said, I'll pick you up at 6. I'll be at your house at 6:15. You're 6:20. I had a little route, and I'd go by and pick them all up. We'd go to the dance, and I'd reverse it like a bus and take them home. And I had another kid and had a car, and we would do that. And of course, a lot of that came from parental support. The parents allowed us to go. Some of these parents square danced, some didn't. The parents trusted the kids. The parents, and there's nothing we can do in this committee or this thing about that. The parents trusted the kid, and they trusted the activity, and like anything else, if the kid went out and didn't go where he said, and he came in late or came in drunk or didn't come in, or he got caught not going to the square dance, well, he may not get to go again. But we did. We went to the square dance. Mom and Dad didn't always know what happened on the way to the dance, but by dance time, we were there. We stayed at the dance and had a heck of a fun time. And when the dance was over, we went out to eat, and Mom and Dad didn't always know what happened there, but if they told us to be home at whatever time, we were there by then. So the thing is, yes, the kids they are a very different animal. They have different time restraints. They have different commitments. The technology, the competition is out there, and the places to go. But we have one of the things to offer. We won't get all the kids in the world. No activity ever will, just like we'll never get all the adult square dancers. But if we put ours out there, we can get our fair share because we have a good product to offer. If we just make them want to come and want to be there. And a lot of what I've told you here is history, but I'm telling you things that worked for us and can be, and that we don't need to delve too much. Yet let's don't emphasize, oh, now you have to put a petticoat on and you have to put a bolo tie on. Okay, if they want to come in, I'm not going to lose them over that. I'm not going to make a big issue over that. But our kids didn't have a problem putting on a bolo tie and a petticoat. I'm not going to tell them, okay, you have to dance to bluegrass and country music and you're going to hear this, But again, we didn't mind dancing to that. We were going square dancing. We expected to be square dancers.
Okay, I'm going to start this thing off with, I agree with most everything Tim said. I think the most important concept that came out of what Tim's saying is, you don't really treat youth square dancers as completely different from normal square dancers. They're basically the same things that get us interested in square dancing get the youth into square dancing. I have a philosophical question for you, and I think your answer would indicate a kind of an attitude. Are they youth square dancers, or are they square dancing youth? So each person is thinking to himself, now what does he mean by that? Well, I think the important thing is that, as Tim was saying, they are square dancing youth. We want to try and treat them pretty much the same way we do as we would a normal square dancer, or maybe perhaps a square dancer in their 20s or even 30s. They're square dancers first, and then they are youth, as opposed to thinking to themselves as youth square dancers. So you would have a different attitude about them.
On that thought there, compare it to another activity involves everybody. Compare it to church. At the church, you've got everybody from great-grandma to the newborn infants, right? And how many at the church, the whole families from great-grandma down to the newborn, they all do things together, but they all do things separate. They have a family night party at church, right, where the whole family's there. But then they also have some youth parties, don't they? And they have some single adults and some senior adults. And next thing you know, you have a family night hot dog thing. Square dancing to a great degree can be the same way with the youth. Yeah, but sometimes they're going to want their own youth hall. They're going to want their own youth square. If they have enough, they like to form a youth club, just like you form a plus club or an A club or a singles club. But yet, all those people all come together sometimes for one common function, don't they? The same thing with the square dancing. They are square dancers who happen to be youth. And there will be times, just like at that church thing, where they'll all blend in, just like we all do it sometimes. And there will be times when they'll isolate into the different groups, cliques, whatever you want to call them.
One of the theories I have, and I have reasons to back up this theory, but I think the basic question that I would like to walk away with, and I would like to understand better, is what is the difference between a square dance caller who is successful calling for youth or a square dance caller who is not successful? Probably everybody has heard the stories about the youth square dance callers, or the square dance callers who come into the youth hall at the National. Some of them are, I wish I didn't have to say this, but some of them are laughed off the stage.
Some of them are ridiculed, and some of them are extremely successful, and the kids are just having a ball. What is the difference between the square dance caller who has a youth group and it is successful, and the square dance caller who is trying to make a youth square dance happen, and it's just not happening for them? And so what I'm making my life effort is to try to explore this and understand why some callers are successful with youth and why some callers are not. And I think that it boils down to rapport, the rapport between the youth and the caller. And so the big question is, how do we develop rapport? Rapport as a relationship between people. Sometimes we have a good rapport. If a police officer approaches you after you just obviously ran a red light, there is a rapport between the two of you, but it is not necessarily good, but nevertheless there is a rapport there. It is an established relationship, or a relationship that develops becomes rapport. I'll relate to you a story. We were at the National Square Dance Convention in Charlotte. The youth were pumped. They were waiting for Tony Oxendine to walk through the door. He was coming in early evening, probably 8 o'clock, something like that. And all day long the kids were coming up. And any of you who think that the youth don't know who the top callers are, you are fooling yourself, because they know exactly who the top callers are. So if you hide them down the hallway and give them the dregs, you can expect exactly what you get out of them, which is nothing, because they know who's dancing to the hot colors, they know who's dancing to the top colors, and they know who is not. And Judy and I ran the Baltimore Square Dance Convention for the youth in 2000, and we handpicked the callers. We only brought callers in there that we knew would be successful with the youth, that had an established reputation. Anyhow, so these kids are ready to dance to Tony Oxendine, and they are pumped. And Tony walks up to the stage. He has 2 records in his hand. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm sure he's doing this really hottest stuff because he's just moving from hall to hall. And Tony put in this song, and I will play it for you. Now, at this point, having been a police officer for 28 years, I'm getting ready to stand behind the stage because I know they're going to rush the stage and they're going to kill Tony Oxendine in front of my face. And I'm not really sure what's going to happen next. But I'm sure we've all heard about those magic moments on the dance floor. Well, Tony created another one of those magic moments on the dance floor. And he did it with this record. And I think it's very significant because at that moment it occurred to me that it's not necessarily about the music that makes youth successful or makes callers successful with youth. Sure, they want to play up-tempo music, they want to play happy music, they want to play fun music, they want you to, they're going to ask you to speed up the record, and I hope nobody does it, because if they're asking you to speed up the record, it means maybe they don't feel challenged enough, and we can do that with choreography, we don't need to do that with speed. And as was rightfully brought up at the last meeting, yes, we sometimes use speed as a gimmick just for a fun, but that's just for a moment. That is not for a night's worth of dancing. So we don't really need to throw any specific thing at them. What we want to give them is a rapport between us and them. And if you're afraid of them, and you're afraid to say no, because you just know they're going to stomp out the door if you say no, then you're afraid of them, and they see that, they feel that, and they know it's coming, and they won't respect you after that. They have to respect you, and respect is earned. It is not a guarantee. It is not an entitlement. So you have to be yourself, but at the same time, you have to like kids. You have to want to call for kids, and they feel that, and they know that, and they can tell if your no is out of malice. They can tell if it's, by the way, I write articles for Square Dancing Today, and you're getting a piece of my next article. But they can tell if your answers are because you don't like them or it's because of their safety. Only you can tell if your no is going to be, is worth risking losing them for the moment, worth risking losing some rapport. Issues of safety are not negotiable. If they want to, dance on the rooftop and there is no walls on the rooftop, then the answer is no. And you can say it with a smile on your face like, you've got to be kidding me. But that's not a negotiable issue, but there may be some things. If they're all whining, maybe you're wrong, and maybe you have to take a step back. And yes, it is complicated. It is a delicate balance when you're dealing with the youth. You want to say some, you want to give them a good time, but you also have to control the situation to a certain extent. You don't want to be pushing them around, and you don't want them to push you around. So I'm looking for the formula, and I'm hoping that some of you out there have got this formula. Tim, you got something?
Oh, yeah, very briefly, I hope. And, of course, usually Tim and briefly doesn't go together. But, yeah, I'm going to go back to my point I said a while ago. To some degree, don't overanalyze it and try to make youth square dancing a whole 180-degree different activity than what we call adult square dancing. It's square dancing. And while they're one of our facets, as I said, and you can divide the facets into old, young, middle-aged, single, couples, whatever, youth is one of those facets they divide into. And they'll have their characteristics and things they like. I think we have teen dancers I divide into two areas. And I think our concept of how we call to these teens needs to be, we need to put our thinking cap on and say, okay, which of these two groups am I looking at? One is teens that we're trying to get. Or kids, or youth, or whatever you want to call them. I'm not a big picky on names, and I won't get on that for a second, because somebody asked me one time, there was a big discussion, well, what do we call these? We call ours kids. Oh, don't they insult them? No, they don't insult it. We call them kids, I can call them youth, I can call them teens, whatever. I've never had it. When I was a kid, they called us kids or teens, and it never bothered us. Christy, have y'all ever had any problem in your club with whether you were referred to as kids or, my kids, I got 4 of my own. I think, the best I can count it's 4. It's hard to get them still. But by the time I get back home, if I show up at home, there's more there. They're my kids. I call them kids. And I ask them, I say, well, how's the kids at school? And they don't have a big issue with names. I believe a lot in it's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's not what I call you, it's how I insinuate it, And there's no disrespect in it. They don't take it if you call them kids. So we call it our kids. I think the kids or the teens, there's two areas. There's the ones you're trying to get. This is ones that aren't square dancers. They haven't taken lessons. You would like them to be. This is the youth groups that Steve and I work with. This is maybe people watching you. There's going to be one way that you may want to call if you have youth spectators watching and you're trying to influence them to say, I want to do that. There may be one way you want to call and music you want to use if you're working with non-square dance teens when you're trying to hook them in there, and get them to say, oh, I want to go do that. Remember what I said before. They got to want to. They can't be made to. If they're made to, it's kind of like going to a school or detention or something. Well, they'll show up, do what they have to do, then go away. And out of that group, you might get a small percentage. You say, well, I was forced to go there, but kind of like it. Majority won't simply because they were forced. So there's one thinking cap on how you attempt, how you talk to, how you do music, how you call to non-square dance teens. A lot of what we're referring to here is square dancing teens. Teens that have gone to lessons. They have a club badge. They are a square dancer. They go to the nationals. They go to the state festival. They go to the local dance. They know and those know that square dancing can be fun. The only thing that's going to run them off is if you just this dance wasn't fun. Next week's dance wasn't fun. Next week's dance wasn't fun. And I tried it. I'm going to get into something else. How many of you would go to a square dance that was real bad, had a bad caller, it was just a bad dance, and you'd leave that dance and quit square dancing? I don't think any of you would. You might say, I ain't going back to that caller. You might say, I ain't going back to that club. But you're square dancers. I'm not going to lose you because you get a bad square dance experience. I can round up people in this hotel that don't square dance and bring them in here and say, hey, I'm going to show y'all square dancing. And I can give them a bad square dance experience. And chances are they'll never get in the activity. Because they're going to say, hey, I tried it. Wasn't my thing, didn't like it. Now I try to tell them, but what you tried really wasn't good. You shouldn't have danced to me. I really messed up. You should have danced to Dave Harry. He would have made you happy. No, I tried square dancing. I'm through. Talk a kid into taking a bite of spinach. Oh, try it. You'll like it. And he tries it. And he says, yep, he spits it out. Oh, that just wasn't cooked right. Try this spinach. It's cooked better. No, I tried it, You better make sure you get it right the first time when you're trying. And a lot of what I'm saying right there applies if you're trying to recruit adult dancers. Okay? The non-ones, you're influencing them. And you can't argue with them. They look at you and say, I tried it. You got to say, well, you did. And now you're trying to tell them, yeah, but I really messed up. What you tried wasn't really, no, I did it. So they're gone. The ones that you've already got in, you're not going to run away, okay? I don't think so. So I'm not so worried about those that come to the dance, whether, a bad caller comes in. Now, they don't want one all the time. I'm not so worried whether Tony does fast or slow or somebody else. They know what's out there. They know it's kind of like going to a movie. If they go see a bad movie, they'll say, well, I'm still going to go next week to see another movie because there's good movies out there. And so when we talk about calling it for youth who are currently square dancing, whether it's at a teen dance or whether they're coming to your club dances, I don't think you have to change a whole lot. Do what you do well, okay? I mean, and some of us can use techno music or do a rap or do some stuff that would kind of make the kids look neat. Some can't. If you can't do it, don't. Somebody in a committee meeting we had a while ago pointed out a very good thing. It says, they would rather dance to a caller doing Turkey in the Straw because he's comfortable at it and he does it real good than to have that caller try to do some rock and roll song, this Share tune, I Believe, is released or something, or one of these kind, when he just does it so bad. He doesn't do anything close to what they listen to on their radio, and it's just hideous, okay? If you can't do that, don't. I'm going to put somebody on the spot right here. Lottie Ainsworth from Louisiana. Been calling just a few years now, but she's been very successful in her area with getting adult dancers, and she's got about a square and a half of kids that have become dancers. How much have you changed your calling style for those kids? Don't answer. Okay, this is Lottie Ainsworth from Louisiana. You heard the question I asked her. Lottie, so you got your kids over there. What have you changed in your calling style for those kids?
Not anything. I don't think it's what you call. I think it's how you call it. And I think the energy level is already there. You've just got to, so is shyness. They're all so shy, especially when they get to the teenage years. And the guys are looking at the girls and they're wondering if they're going to look stupid in their minds by doing swinging. Sometimes their hormones play a big factor in this. They're growing up. And so you got to think about that, and you got to think about what would be good for them. And I think keeping their energy level up is very important. But I don't think you have to change your style of call, which my calling's kind of energy high anyway. But so I had some blah blah songs too.
But you haven't drastically, and I didn't prompt Lottie for this. She didn't know this was coming, and you gave the answer just like I wrote it. I mean, no, that
can you tell?
Good. No, I didn't. But I knew that Lottie calls for her kids just like Lottie calls. Okay. Now I don't know that she doesn't have a song that the kids like, particularly that maybe she doesn't do for the adults, and maybe there's one that the adults really like to hear her sing that the kids don't care a lot about. But in general, I know that she doesn't change her style of calling, her choreography, her song selection. I would say 98% of the dance she would call for that teens is the same dance she would call for anybody else.
And surprisingly, the music that I would think they don't like or rolled their eyes to some, oh Lord, we're going to hear this again, is usually the music they come up and ask me for. When I go off calling and they travel with me, sometimes they do, and they'll say, are you going to do whatever tonight? And I'm thinking, no, I'm not going to do this again. But I can see the excitement in their eyes, and I don't want to lose that. I don't care if I've done it 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
They need that. And they can hoop and holler. And they're in a world, when they go out to a dance, they're in a world where they don't know if some of these square dancers are going to accept them. And some of them don't. And y'all know that. Some of them don't. And I don't like the idea of I'm getting off on something, just calm down.
Keep going.
I don't like the idea of separating the youth from the adults. I hate that. I hate it nationals. When I first found out, when I became involved with youth, and I found out that they separated them and they put them up there in a little room, I thought, they're not animals. Let them come dance with us. Because there's not a lot of youth groups. They don't do this at home usually. They're dancing with the adults, so why can't they dance with us? And for a whole year, I was just all bothered by this. Well, I took my youth to some dances where I felt like that some of the men mistreated them. And I thought to myself, you idiot, why didn't you already see that? Because I live in this world where people do not do that. And this innocent sort of mind that I had. And so when I saw that, I thought to myself, somebody is sure smarter than me about this, because they have developed this room, which is a safe haven. And I think it's allowed that they can come out if they want to, if they're a certain age, which more I learn about it, the more I understand this. And I think it's a very good idea. I'm glad I didn't be very vocal in the beginning about it. I'd have felt like an idiot now.
Let me just make a comment about that. One of the things that we've found is at our festival is we provide opportunities for them to dance in the youth hall, and they like to dance together because they want to kick up their heels and that type of thing. We also force them to dance with the adults by closing the hall down at certain times. This creates a condition by which they will and can go out and dance with the adults. We're providing them a place to dance so they can dance their way. Some of the kids choose to dance with the adults, some of them don't. More than anything, the older kids choose to dance with the adults, but interestingly enough, they try to put together their own square because they don't like to break down like the adults do. Okay, we have another question back here.
I wanted to comment on Lottie's comment.
Your name, please, sir.
Bob Riggs from Denver, Colorado. I call for the Rocky Mountain Dancers, which is a performance group, and I had sort of two comments, one relating to what Lottie said about the youth hall. The last two nationals, Anaheim and St. Paul, we've taken between 25 and 30 youth to the National Square Dance Convention to put on performances. Well, they went up to the youth hall last year, and there were no callers there. And there was no dancing anywhere else at the point. And so they got out in the form. They formed a square. They started singing, and they started dancing. And one of the gals was enough of a caller that she was doing choreography, so they were making their own entertainment right there. They discovered that the majority of the time in the youth hall, even when the hot callers were there, they would rather be out on the mainstream floor dancing with the hot callers that were out there. And yes, sometimes they danced together, sometimes they didn't. And primary comment to me is, it's so slow, because I do pick up the tempo a little bit. The other comment I wanted to make was, groups have different purposes. And the majority of what Tim and Bruce have been talking about in the early days, I think they were recreational kind of dancing. A lot of the kids today they're in music lessons, or they're on a soccer team, or they're on a baseball team with an objective, a goal. They're goal-oriented. The folks at the Rocky Mountain Dancers, their objective is to get good enough to dance on a performance team. And that takes a fairly substantial amount of effort, because an average kid is going to learn mainstream in 10 hours in the first hour of each of our weekly 3-hour sessions. Because we meet weekly, the first hour is mainstream. We have 3 entry points a year for new kids, and so we get new kids periodically into this, and they learn mainstream in 10 weeks. The second hour, we have different formations. We're doing royal set, 8 couples to a square, fixed choreography. We're doing round dances. We're doing all sorts of different stuff. Third hour is the performance group, and they're practicing for whatever the next performance is. We're up to about 20 performances a year. This group has been invited as the only representative from the United States to represent the United States at an international folk festival in Idaho in August. It's the doorway to Europe, to the international folk festivals in Europe. It's really, really neat to watch the kids. We've got callers, we've got whatever. But the thing I wanted to get at, the main point there was, we have recreational groups, and we have groups with defined goals, like getting to good enough to be a performance. The Dancing Jewels from the Seattle Northwest area is another group that has defined goals. And I don't know enough about them. I've got to go pick somebody's brain about them, because there's some neat things going on in the Northwest. With that group, they dance plus, mainstream and plus, extremely precisely, and I don't know what they're doing to get there. They're a round dance group, but some of them dance extremely good and almost competitive square dance, as well as being the round dance performance stuff. And I'm not familiar with them 100%, so I won't talk too much about that. But I wanted to say that those groups have goals. And the kids, what holds them in is those goals and moving toward those goals.
When we're preparing for a festival or a big dance, and we kind of tweak that at one of our club dances, that actually piques their interest, and they do put more into their dancing that particular night.
My name is Jeannie Gaskill from San Jose, California. I am a beginning caller. However, I'd like to speak to the group as a mother of several teen dancers. I've got a 9-year-old who both dances and calls. I have an 18-year-old and 21-year-old who've started dancing, one 2 years before I did and one 4 years before I did. And they, in fact, got me into square dancing. I guess, the things that my kids like is one, high energy, and good music. They don't want the only things they don't want to hear are the stuff that sounds like it comes off, that sounds old, sounds like it comes off of 78 RPM. But if you pull out a good version of an older song that's upbeat, moves, has a good feel to it, maybe they know the tune to it, they love it. And in fact, if you look at their CD collections, every one of my kids has got CDs that are classical music, CDs that come from 70s and 80s, and as well as the modern stuff, and various genres. And they're not the only ones. When you look at when I talk to their friends, they have similar collections. So the kids don't necessarily want modern stuff, and they're not tolerant of repetition, whether it's the same old singing call module, caller after caller, or the third time they've heard Whoop Square It Is in the teen hall. Okay, and that's the kind of, and I've got one of my three who's not still square dancing. It's my eldest daughter. But I think the biggest difference with her is people haven't made the connections with her from the square dance world that they have with my other two. Bobby always wants to come back, my 9-year-old. But he's got people who talk to him. He's got people who invite him into their square, ask him, why haven't you been square dancing lately if they haven't seen him in a while? My younger daughter has the same thing. She's just joined the military. She's going up to Fort Lewis and will start up square dancing there when she gets there. So connection to the adults in the square dance world seems to be a really important part. And I'm not just talking within their club, of whether they stay in square dancing or not.
Well, I want to make a real quick comment in case any of you go to call a state festival or nationals. You mentioned one thing that brought some memories back when you said when they've heard Hoop Square It Is for the third time or something. Don't overuse something with the kids because you think you got to. Two incidences that I can remember specifically. I don't remember the year it happened, but I remember the year that Neutron Dance came out on the Chaparral Records, and every caller that went to the teen hall that year at nationals, 4 out of 5 called Neutron Dance, and after the fourth time, the kids would they wouldn't dance to it, or they would do something because they were just overrun with it. The same thing happened a few years later when Pink Cadillac came out. YMCA. I mean, they love those songs, they really do. But they're just like you. Do you want to hear your favorite song 10 tips in a row? They don't either.
At our national, we actually had a list of calls in order. So that the callers could come in and take a look at what had been called recently, and it just eliminated that whole problem. So obviously you want to take that in mind. Nasser's next, and then you're next.
And Nasser Shukair from California. I've had quite a bit of luck with a Bring a Grandkid program, and just encourage club dancers to bring their grandkids out. It's a good recruiting tool, so I wanted to put that on the tape. Haven't heard, are you using the Presidential Sports Award? And it sounds kind of corny, but it actually works. You can go to the internet, I don't remember, do you know the URL for that by any chance? Yeah, go to any search engine and type in Presidential Sports Award, and all of these make money quick sites will come up, but they come up anyway, no matter what you type in. But anyway, one of them is the Presidential Sports Award, and if they the rules are that they have to have 50 hours in the activity, and they can get 1.5 hours per day. In order, you can't get 12 hours in a day, and so it takes them a while to do that. And this is a maintain tool. Someone that might break out and say, hey man, if they might drop out, hey, you've got 45 hours for your sports award. It also encourages them to go out to dances on the weekends because because they can double dip that week. Instead of just the lessons, they'll get a Friday night dance and a Saturday night dance. And then once they complete the 50 hours, they get a letter from the president.
Well, and that ties into what he said about kids are goal-oriented. That's a goal. That's something they're working towards.
I keep a little notebook of each kid that's in my group, and at the end of the session, I sign off for them for their and show them how many hours they've got. The other point I wanted to make is about if you think about all of the top callers that you really enjoy dancing to, chances are that most of them started calling as teens. So in terms of the long-term health of the activity, we've got to have a strong teen program to get the future stories and Oxendines, and these kind of guys. As part of, I don't always just show them how to swing through and how to spin the top. About once a month, I show them something about what the equipment does, what a caller does, how the speakers, how you can aim your speakers, or some little, some aspect of the calling activity. Most of them I've not found anyone that really had the calling bug, but I have had some that want to try it. That usually convinces them never to try it again. But you can make it. They'll want to. They're curious.
Or just show them the money. That'll get them.
That's it. Show them the money. But make them a CD and say, hey, go practice it, just like any of the other callers started. So it's worth the effort. A youth program, I think, is a vital part. We find that the youth are bringing in their parents. Now, I know Lottie has found that some of your adult club dancers came for the youth, and vice versa. The parents bring in the youth. I had one youth that she would start coming. I have 2 beginner classes a week in the same hall, a Tuesday class and a Wednesday class, and she was coming to both the Tuesday class and the Wednesday class as an angel. And come to find out, it was like her parents were divorced, and Mommy was in the Tuesday class and Daddy was in the Wednesday class because they couldn't be in the same class together because they didn't like each other. But anyway, they'll bring their people.
Thanks, Nasser. Question back here.
I'm Mary Castleberry from Joplin, Missouri, which is border of Oklahoma, and I was going to talk a little bit about the Northeast Oklahoma district. We just have a big festival we just completed a couple weeks ago, and one of the things they do have is a youth hall, and the youth hall differs from the national a little bit because they do allow the adults to come and dance with the youth, and I think that as long as the adults who come know that they're going to be dancing at that energy level and putting up with that cut up and ready to go, I think it makes it a little bit more interesting for the kids. I've seen the national hall where it just seems like they are bored and they're tired of dancing with the same kids over and over and over and over and never have anybody else to interact with. Yeah, but so I that's just my own opinion. I think maybe they ought to open up the youth hall a little bit for adults, maybe a couple hours a day or something to mingle that way.
Well, she's passing the mic next. I'm going to say I'm not sure that speaking as Tim Till as an experience when I was a kid, we never objected to adults being at when my teen club, we had a monthly dance. It was always open to adults. They'd pay their money at the door. When I went to the Nationals in '78 the first time, and then every one I've been to since then, of course, the most recent ones I won as a teen, but in the early ones when I was going as a teen, I would spend some time in the teen hall. I would spend as much time in the adult halls, and we never had a problem with the adult dancers coming into ours because those that came in wanted to dance with us. They wanted to dance our way. If you didn't like to twirl and bump on a weave the ring, then you wouldn't walk in our room. If you came in our room, it's because you wanted to do that. And the adults that came into our room didn't expect us to alter our program because, oh, you're there now, so we're going to change our whole program.
What time is this over? And it's 11:45 now? Okay. I want to make a comment. I want to make a comment, and then we're going to open back up. One of the things that Judy and I have found is that if you're going to have a youth group, be it a class or just a group as a dance club, it's really important to get the parents involved with the group. I'm sure it's no secret to anybody, kids can't do anything without the adult support. And if you have a parent or parents who are dropping the kids off 5 minutes before the class and picking them up 2 minutes after the class is over, you are in trouble, because it's only a matter of time, because any excuse will do to keep the kid out of class. Billy doesn't have his priorities right. Janie didn't do her homework. Eddie's shoe came untied. I mean, any excuse whatsoever, the parents will find it. It's not about the kid. It's about the parents not really putting a priority on this. So what Judy and I have done is we look for projects for the parents. We suck the parents into our delusions by asking them to participate, to help. Judy has the mothers making dresses for the next dance or whatever. We have craft night. We have she encourages the parents to bring their crafts along, and most men don't. The husbands are great for running to the craft store to pick up supplies, or better yet, Home Depot. So we try to find ways to get the parents involved, because it's really critical that the parents are into this thing. Even the non-square dancing parents that have been involved with our kids are into it now, because Judy encourages them to stay. We have a 4-square room in our basement, and so we have, our dances, our youth group meets in our basement, and we keep the parents upstairs. We order pizza later on, and we do everything we can to make it a friendly environment for the parents, even more so than the youth, and the parents are looking forward to coming down because it's a social thing for them. Okay, next question.
I'm Lyle Beck, and we're president of United Square Dancers of America. And about a year ago, we had the pleasure of attending one of Ray and Lottie's nights, where they had a great big pot of gumbo and a lot of fried catfish. They had their youth there. They had the youth parents. They had adult dancers there. They had some people that had never danced, some that were in lessons, some that were through lessons. We had a great evening. The kids enjoyed it, and it was really a great night to show what you can do to put them all together. And we're fortunate to have Lottie make the youth training video for us. She called it. She set it up, and those youth training videos are available at no cost. And I've run out here at the convention. I brought about a dozen along, and I've run out. But if you would like to have one of them, let me know, or Edith Weber, their Director of Information for USDA, let us know, and we will get one to you. We have other youth programs, a Hop to It program, the little frog that adults can wear on their badge. When a youth sees that, they know they can walk into the square and these people will be willing to dance with them. We give them to the youth and they like them. They put them on their badge, but the real purpose is for the adults to wear them so that the youth are comfortable walking into their square. Our youth chairman, John and Alicia Becker from Louisiana, and they're fired up just like Lottie and Ray are, and if our youth program can help you, contact us or our youth chairman. This year, for the first time, we contacted the people in Oklahoma City. What can we do? Put on a party for the kids? They gave us a Thursday night after party, and I don't think Alicia knows what she's going to do with that yet, but she's working on it. And last I heard, she's planning on having food and some dancing and maybe line dancing and skits or whatever. And so ideas there would help too. But if United Square Dancers can help you, get a hold of either Edith or I, and we will work with you on that. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Dick Gaskell from San Jose, California. I'm a caller. My wife's a caller, and as she mentioned earlier, we have a 9-year-old son who's a caller. So we do it all together. We have 2 youth groups in our area. Jill and John have one. That's actually where Bobby learned to dance. We have a young gal who just started out calling. And my son's school has just asked me to start a youth club within their school. Bobby's been talking it up, and so they called me up, and we're about to do that. But there's one thing that I wanted to bring up here that Nasser kind of touched on earlier that I'm involved with CALLERLAB. We've lost a number of callers in our area in the last few years, older callers who've either died or retired. And right now I'm trying to tap the youth groups around the country to find out what youth might be interested in calling. And I'm not talking about, we've been talking about youth as if all youth are 12 to 18. Like my son's 9, in Jill's club they've got kids that are starting at 6 years old. I think we need to look at youth in a much wider range from 6 up to even up to 20 or so. When we were at the Nationals in Anaheim, we had an interesting situation where several younger people from, I guess, 18 to 22 or 23 wanted to come dance in the youth hall, and they wouldn't let them in. So they started their own square outside until the lady came out and kicked them out of there. I think the whole situation there was handled very badly, but I've yelled at a lot of people about that. I hope we never see that situation again. Anyway, what I have done is I've talked with Jerry Reed and a number of callers who started out when they were teens, including Nasser and Betsy Gata and Randy and a whole bunch of other ones. And they're all supporting either a project or a committee, and we haven't quite got it rolling yet, to recruit and train youth callers. We've got a lot of older callers who are going away. I mean, they've been at it for 30 or 40 years. They can't do it forever. And we need a new source of callers. People who are starting at 40 aren't going to be around that long either. So if we want youth to dance, we need youth callers to entertain them. So what I'm asking is, if you know anybody in your youth groups that might be interested, have them contact either Jerry Reed or me or just about anybody on the CALLERLAB Executive Committee or the board. And what we're trying to do is get them organized. We're also planning on having a seminar at the Nationals, a 2-hour class for the youth only that might be interested in becoming callers. Let them try it out. Let them play with it. What I've seen is Bobby, anyway, is more comfortable calling to other kids than he is to calling to adults. Well, the adults think it's sort of neat when a little kid gets up there and does stuff, because they don't see that very often.
Thanks, Dick. Just a minute. It's probably time to make a plug. I'm actually the youth committee chairman for CALLERLAB, and I would be interested in hearing any comments or any thoughts you have on getting youth into calling. Christy Jacobs here is in our midst, sitting next to my lovely wife Judy, who is wearing peach. And Christy is a youth caller who is being mentored. Part of the charge of our committee is to mentor youth callers under 25. We're interested in getting people into our committee. So I would appreciate it if you're not too busy, if you could join our committee. So anybody who has any interest whatsoever in joining our committee, come see me or Tim, or if you have to think about it, and then when you fill out your critique sheet, make sure that you put in there that you're interested in joining the youth committee, and it will happen just like that.
I believe attending this seminar was an automatic sign up, wasn't it?
Yes, you are absolutely.
We took their names as they came in. Every third one was assigned to be a sub chairman.
Okay. Also, one more thing. I personally define youth. If you read my first article, you would hear that I said that youth is not really so much defined by an age, but by a feeling. I think you would probably find Mike Jacobs, Betsy Gata, and all the other youth callers who have joined up, and Tim as an example, and Scott from our youth committee, would say that being a youth dancer is more about a feeling than it is about an age. We're actively talking with the NEC now about the possibility, the concept of raising the age in the youth hall, so that maybe in the future that could be addressed. At least they're going to work on that. And speaking of which, let us hear from Gene Triplett of the NEC.
I just had a couple things I'd like to say. Connie and I recently were assigned as advisors to the youth hall. We are more than happy to sit down and talk with anyone who's interested in that. We're open to suggestions. We have guidelines for the youth hall. They have been set up over the last 30 or 40 years. It has been tried in the past where adults were allowed. At one time, I think it was 25. You could come in and dance in the youth hall. It created a lot of problems for us. So that's when the NEC came in and said 18 is the age limit. That because it was that way and is that way now doesn't mean that it has to stay that way. We're open to suggestions. The guidelines are changed on a constant basis. We would love to hear from you. This is our 5th consecutive CALLERLAB convention, and until this year, we have nobody's ever discussed the youth hall with us. So we assumed that everything was going along all right. Bruce and Judy have talked to us at conventions, but we have never discussed it basically at the CALLERLAB conventions. We're looking forward to going to Reno next year, so if you have anything that you'd like to discuss with us, or if you have any recommendations, we're open. At one time, the NEC was very, these are the rules and this is the way it'll be. But over the past few years, this has changed and evolved, so we're looking to make changes, and we know that one of the best reasons to make a change is because it's always been done that way. As my dad always told me, if it's always been done that way, that's the time to look and see if there's another way to do it, and that's what we would like to do. I will not stand here and tell you we're going to change anything, but we will take it to the committee and review it with them. So if you have any discussions or anything you'd like to suggest, we'll be happy to do that. I wanted to respond to the California that Dick mentioned there. The problem exists when you have a rule, you have to follow it. And the problem that we run into, all due respect to the callers, but the callers helped create the problem, because they kept gearing that sound up in the hall to get out that square that was out in the hallway trying to dance, and that it was really deafening for the kids inside the hall. So that's why they were asked to leave. Not that they didn't want them out there dancing, but the callers they were just revving up those amps, and it was just drowning out everything inside. So if there's a rule there that anybody doesn't like, you got to work to change it. You don't try to fight it and create additional problems with it. So if we have a rule that doesn't work for everybody, come and meet with us and let's see if we can change it. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gene. One of the things we're getting close to, you want to try to cut it off. Okay, one of the things that is extremely clear to me is that the NEC is concerned for the safety of our children, and for that we cannot fault them. The burden of proof is on us to show that raising the age of the youth hall is not going to present a danger to our children, and so that is why the rule is in place. And we're going to see what we can do to address their concerns. But it is about safety, and we cannot fault them for that. We just need to work within the system to see what we can do to change it. And I'm not going to pressure them at this point to make changes on the spot. But we'll talk to them about it, and we'll see what we can do about bringing about some subtle change. Okay. Anybody got anything last moment thoughts before we call it a day?
Biggest thing I want to close with to say is I think your biggest emphasis, as I said before, needs to be on getting the new kids in. The ones you've got in, just what they need to deal with, but they know what square dancing is. Your biggest thing is getting new kids in and maintaining them.
My lovely wife wants to have the last word.
Well, you're not going to say no to that
So
one.
what is the difference?
No, I was just going to say, one of the ways we found to keep the kids, and it's more at festivals and when we did the national. I mean, we worked 5 long years to make our national successful, and it was. We do little things, like I go out and I solicit door prizes for the kids. They don't have to be huge, although Connie and Jean were wonderful and brought us huge radios for the kids at nationals. But it's little things like that. The other thing we've done is we've gone and we've gotten the glow-in-the-dark necklaces and bracelets at nationals. We gave every kid one of those. We turned the lights out, and Jerry Biggerstaff called to them. It was phenomenal to watch. We've introduced rounds to them. at our festival, we do a round dance workshop in the morning, and then the cure that night will cue whatever dance he taught that morning. So we try to keep it interested to him because we want him to come back. We want him to think this is fun, and they really do. They really enjoy it. So that's just something little. We've also taken the frog with USDA. The kids raise their own money for an after party at their festival, and one of the ways they've done that is by selling frogs. We've made them out of plastic canvas, and they sell them for $1. And this past year, we just raffled off an Afghan. The kids made over $400 on this Afghan for their pizza party. So, but they enjoy that. And it gets them intermingled with the adults. So that's just some pointers I had that I wanted to mention to everybody.
Okay, we'll see you on the floor here at the convention. We're happy to talk to you anytime about anything involving youth or politics if you like. And thank you very much for coming.